Hello and welcome to another episode of The Family Business with the Alessis, and today we are actually talking business here at the farm in Georgia with Armando and I, and we are talking about things specifically that we don't get to talk about on Sunday, partly because of the crowd. We don't always know everybody to this degree to where we could go deep, and we want to be as sensitive as possible when we are doing our business on Sunday. But today it's nice because we are actually up at our Goodfellas camp. So we got our gear going here. And how many men we have up with us this time?
We have 11 men participating, and we have 12 or 13 leaders helping out. So it's a great group.
So 20-something guys that are hanging out up at the farm here in Georgia. And we're recording this right around the Father's Day season. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't mind, forgive us if we're leaning a little towards the men in our comment, because it's right around Father's Day, and it's also, we're surrounded by a bunch of guys, and we miss our wives. we definitely want to be home soon. But we want to talk about a subject that I think could be helpful, because it's for both. Okay, it's for humanity in general, people in general, especially, Armando, as we start piling up the wins in our lives. There's what we refer to as the 3 G's that you just don't touch if you are going to continue your rise in being success and walking in all of God's best for your life. And I've heard of these 3 G's. They actually came from my dad. My dad heard of them from somebody back when he was a young man. And then he shared them with me back when I was just a young man. And the AC just came on, so we're going to turn that baby off so we don't let it make too much noise in here. But I've heard about these 3 G's for some time, and we've mentioned them from time to time to some of our guys.
Yes.
And they have responded. They take it to heart. And but I've heard that they don't always understand all of them. They got 2 of them down. They just don't understand the 3rd. So here's what the 3 G's are. If you're going to continue to live in a level of prosperity and blessings in your life, there's 3 things you just do not touch, especially in our line of work. You ready? Say them with me.
Yep. The gold.
The gold.
The glory.
The glory.
And?
Say it.
The girls.
The girls. Now, if a woman's watching this, here's what you don't touch: the gold, the glory, or the guys.
That's good.
The 3 G's. Now, we say you don't touch it, of course, meaning you don't embrace it. You don't let these things become part of your world, because what you're saying is the gold belongs to who?
God.
All the gold belongs to the Lord. The glory is the Lord's. Mm-hmm. We are where we are because of God. And of course, the girls or the guys, they, if you're married especially, you don't touch someone else's girl or guy.
That's right.
That's not your deal. Because that right there would cause a major blow up in any area of your life if you're touching those 3 G's.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you, Mondo?
Well, Pastor, you've always explained it many, many times over the years. And you always said, okay, your time here at Metro, at church, or whatever organization, you were always at that organization, but I've always taken it to any organization that I was.
Sure.
Someone may disagree with something you do in management,
right,
or a decision that you make, or something like that. And you've always said, well, you might have a disagreement with me, or you might not like that I did this or I did that. But I'm always going to avoid these areas of moral failure that trip up and destroy. We've seen it throughout the Bible too, where it was either the gold that wasn't theirs, the glory, which was all God's, or the girls, women that did not belong to them. So you've always said there's 3 G's that I'm going to focus on. and I won't fail you in these. And that's been easy, at least for me as a man, to understand. And I think all of our Goodfellas feel this way. We like to focus. We like to take a few things and just, okay, I can be good at this, because we're not perfect.
Yeah.
So if I have a little slip up here where, maybe I banged my finger with a hammer and a word came out that I was used to saying back in the day,
Right.
or some other little thing like that, we want to try to control those the best we can. But there are three things that we're never going to do. If I'm ever at any point in time a part of the offering at church, and I'm moving envelopes here and there, whatever, those G's are in my head. This is not a penny that I find on the ground at Metro Life do I put in my pocket.
Yeah.
That's God's.
Yeah.
The glory, I start feeling really good about myself, and wow, I preached a message, or I taught the youth, or I whatever went really, really well at the church, and I start getting big-headed because I'm getting compliments, and people are saying, "Wow, you're awesome! Hey, you said something there I don't even think Pastor Steve would have said." I've actually heard that over 25 years I've been at church.
Yeah.
I can't let that stuff get to my head. Well, you're such a great this or husband or whatever. That I just got to say, you know what? Thank you. Praise God, because He gives me the strength to do so. And the girls, we're one girl men. Yeah. We're married. That's our girl. Yep. So what it means to me is focus. I'm able to focus on three areas that trip up pretty much every man that ever falls completely. Yeah. Those are one of those three is attached. Yeah. We're not going to do those.
Yeah. You may be hearing some noise in the background here. That's because all our guys are running around and we're doing some work. So don't let the interruption interrupt what we're talking about today. The aspect of those three G's, they're very subtle. It's not something that you're running around. The enemy just knows you're not running around and there it is. Right. You're gonna stumble over it. There it is. Watch out! You're gonna trip up and fall. No, they're very subtle, and they come at you, especially as you start to put together wins. All right. Now, when we were small, the G's didn't matter. Because we had nothing to be prideful about. Right. We didn't have the financial resources, right? So we couldn't do anything there, and we weren't real attractive because we were getting our sea legs about us. We were trying to figure out how to build this thing, how to grow the church and our business, and so it wasn't that appealing. There was always somebody better that was more attractive, that was faster, building it faster, bigger. So we didn't have to worry about those things. But I remember time and time again, gosh, the allure as success starts to come. Now all of a sudden you realize, okay, this is where the weed could come in and mess up everything that you've ever planted in your life, because those three G's, it's common to every person, male, female. The more of the financial resources that now you have, it becomes very easy. Money talks.
Oh, yes, It does.
Money talks.
Yes, it does.
And, in our case, we have a board that is around that I surround myself with. We have a bookkeeping office that I'm very transparent. When he opens, I keep his door open so I can go in, and my conversations about certain things that need to be paid and that certain places to put our money. If it looks like any of it would be self-serving, I've got to make sure that I'm doing it loud enough for whoever is next door in the office to know about. Because if I'm trying to hide something, then that's meaning that gold is saying, hey, why don't you put a little over here?
Over there.
I remember when I was young, starting the church, learning the biggest lesson about finances. And that lesson was, who's going to be your provider? Who's going to take care of this ministry? And in our line of work, it's very easy. Please forgive me for saying it like this, but I think businessmen understand this as well, and businesswomen. When you're dealing with people that have financial resources, after a while, it's easy to see a dollar sign right here on the forehead. it's easy to see, okay, that person brings this much money to the table. That person brings this much influence financially to my organization. And if you're not careful, you could start leaning into that person, and because you think you need to take care of them. Well, it was like a moment that I had when I was younger, starting the church, and I was in the shower. And I was struggling with a certain individual that was in the church that I felt like I just needed to be honest with them. And I was afraid that if I was honest, I might lose them. And because they were going through something and they needed some good counsel. And I remember the Lord, while I was in the shower, saying, all right, so what if they leave? Who's going to pay your bills? And anytime the Lord stirs up a question like that in me, it's very self-serving on God's part.
He knows what he's doing.
He's the one with the answer, and he's really referring to himself. And so when I sat there and said, Lord, if they do leave, you're going to pay the bills.
Yep.
You're going to bring the financial resources.
Yep.
And you're the one that's going to take care of it. So, I take that trust test quite a bit. Where I have to go back and say, God, you're the provider, not this individual. So I don't go looking at people with dollar signs on their foreheads, and I don't try to give play favoritism to people. I'm very sensitive about that. I don't ever want that to be the case, because money can never rule what we do. So gold, the G of gold, has to be put in its place.
Yeah.
God is our provider, not man. And God's the one who has all the gold and all the silver. It all belongs to him. So I can't touch it.
Yeah.
I get my share. You get your share.
Right.
But it belongs to the Lord and the work of God.
Yeah. And I think it's important you said money can tend to rule. I think it's good to know that money wants to rule. In the Bible it says, and I know everyone watches this podcast, but the Word of God says that in a little g, there's a little g God named Mammon.
Good.
This little g God wants to be your Lord. So not only people, your bills talk, your own account talks. I can't tell you how many decisions that I've made. I'm a money guy. I like thinking in math terms. And it could be a wonderful idea that my wife throws out at me, and she's not even meaning like tomorrow or next week. She's just like dreaming.
Right.
And I'll be, well, we'll have to, yeah, that sounds pretty good. Babe, you're just saying that. Well, no, I mean, how are we gonna do that? Because money is already talking in my mind and started saying, wow, that is a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
One day we will do that, and let's just pray for the resources and let's see how that God works that out for us. But since we live in such a practical world, I mean, we're in the world, we're just supposed to not be of it.
Yeah.
I tend to get of it sometimes when I'm looking at the financial number, because we know the number. Those of us who run the books in our own house, we know the number.
Yeah.
So it wants to rule. That God of money wants to rule your life just to keep you limited.
Yeah.
That's it.
Hey, some of the guys won't make this trip.
Some of the guys didn't.
They won't make this trip because they can't take time away from their job. They could, but in their mind, they won't because of a business deal that's being done. And they feel like, oh my gosh, these couple of days, I just can't miss it.
Right.
And so they let the gold dictate what would be a spiritual event.
One of the most intense
Spiritual events that will so set them up for greater success in the future. Yes. But they don't see it because the gold begins to talk to them. So we're not just talking about putting gold in our pocket and stealing. We're talking about you don't touch it when it comes to you making important decisions for your life. Don't let it talk to you.
That's really good.
Okay, here's the other one. The glory.
The glory.
What does that mean now? Okay, because I mean, if you go and look in the Bible, there's a place where it's called the Ark of the Covenant. So the Ark of the Covenant was established, and it represented the presence of God. So that ark, wherever it went, flourished. But there was one thing that you could not do. and that was you could not physically touch the ark, even to carry it,
That's right.
maneuver it. There were poles that were put in place where rings were on the side of it. So they put these poles. Well, one day they're transporting it on the back of a donkey cart, and they hit a bump, and the thing starts to fall out of the cart, and a couple of guys go to touch it, and as soon as they touched it, boom, they die.
Done.
Because the pattern is, don't touch the glory of God. David in the Bible is afraid of that. He sends it to a city, and that thing sits in a guy's house. Everything in that guy's house prospered.
Everything.
The fields started to bloom, man.
The deserts start to grow trees.
The harvest is overwhelming. His animals are fertile. His wine, everything. His kids, his wife, everything is beautiful because of the presence of the Lord being in his home. All right? And actually, David's like, hey, where's the ark? Because David was afraid after what happened with someone dying.
I would be too.
Yes, I would be too. And so they say to him, hey, well, it's over at Joe's house, and they're like, what do you mean? Yeah, everything in Joe's life is great right now. And David's like, you know what? I need to get that ark back to Israel. And it's a beautiful story of how he gets it transported. But the ark represents the glory of the God, the glory of the Lord. And the point there is you don't touch the glory of God. You don't take the credit. You don't take credit.
That's right.
For what God is doing in your life.
And how could we take credit? Like if we slow down and think about it, the very breath that we breathe is provided by Him. Every single time we breathe in, we're taking oxygen in that He created in this beautiful world. And I think about that story, and I think two things. One, that guy or two guys that went to hold the ark, those great intentions. Let me not let the ark fall. Could have been respectful, like we're going to hold this thing up. But it doesn't matter what the intention is. If it's God's glory, don't touch it. The second thing that came to mind was, if you're being worshipped, ask a question.
Wow.
If you're being respected and honored, and all that is nice. You're respected, you're honored, you're taken care of, people love you, probably because you've sowed. You've sowed a lot. You have a harvest of people that follow and are in our church. It happens in our families, in our lives. But if you're being worshipped, and some people like that in the society right now, but that's the time you want to ask the question, am I taking on some glory that isn't mine? Because the fact of the matter is that God owns it all, created it all, and can take it all. And He doesn't, thank God. But we have to be able to give Him that praise. I think us praising God is more for us than it is for Him. Because He knows He's God. He's got angelic hosts all over. He's surrounded by praise. He does. It says, if we don't, the rocks will in the Bible. The rocks are going to cry out. So He already has what He needs. I think He's just trying to make sure that we understand that for our life, if we put Him first and give Him the glory for it all, that's how we're going to live the best life that we can live.
Yeah. And the rocks already are doing that. Just go visit the Grand Canyon.
Wow, that's true.
Go see Niagara Falls.
Jeez.
So you sit there and you realize, wow, that's all God.
They're praising God.
Amazing, praising God, nonstop. What that says to us, especially if you're trying to run a business, you're running an organization, you're managing people, and there's success. Again, where there's no success, it's like, no, not a big deal. But it's very tempting to start thinking to yourself, look what I've done. And I like that you said, it's okay to be complimented. It's okay to get that nice little plaque,
good job,
that recognition by your peers for the success that you're able to enjoy. But the moment you start taking the credit for all of it as though it is your doing, you find yourself, pride cometh before a fall. And I'm not the guy that always likes to talk about myself. I like to share about what I'm doing, but I'm not really bright enough and talented enough to see the level of success that we get to enjoy, even when we come up here with these guys, Mondo. And we go home after spending 3 days with them and the transformation that takes place. You, I, John Roman behind the camera, all of the leadership that comes up here knows this is not our doing.
No.
There's no way in the world
Yes,
we
absolutely.
are smart enough, talented enough to make these things happen.
That's right.
And when I look at our business, our ministry right now, and I say ours because you're involved in it, John's involved in it, when I look at what has been able to happen, it goes so much further beyond what we as individuals are capable of doing.
Yeah.
And it's not about, oh, I'm humble. So I've seen some people be very prideful
In their
in their humility.
in their humility, yes.
It's not that. I mean, it's genuinely, we continually are reminded that this is not our doing.
Yeah.
And one of the ways we do that is you don't hear a lot of look what I've done.
We don't.
We are very we.
That's right.
Okay. Intentional,
Yes.
trained, because there's times where we even look at some of our group leaders who want to say my group, or my ministry,
My team, my Connect group.
my team, my Connect group. And we want them to take ownership. We just never want them to think that area can become it's easy to slip into pride. Don't touch the glory, man.
That's right.
Don't touch it. You're part of our team. Yeah. We're a team. And we have to train our younger employees that come along, because I remember feeling like, wow, my team, all three of us at the time, my team, and I'd go to pastors' conferences, and I was so prideful of my team, and I'm like, well, 3 people. And meanwhile, these pastors got hundreds of people on their team. And so I realized, hey, it's part of youth that we want to feel valuable.
Yes.
Like, look what we've accomplished. But it all goes back to the Lord. And as long as we don't touch that glory, sure, be patted on the back. Yeah. Take your bow. Let them honor you for what you've done. Because honor is a big deal. They do it. Honor is to be given where honor is due. But never let that residue of that get on you to where now, you're needing to post it on social media. Look how great you are. Yeah. Because you're doing this.
Yeah, that causes an inflated head. And it makes it really easy to understand the desire for us to be recognized, I think is God-given. We don't want to have children that we're always correcting and not saying, hey, you did a great job in your room today. Or, this week you did really great in school. Good job getting that A. We want to be recognized. One of the jokes in my house is when they tell me no, when I want them to share something and they say something, I'm like, I'm feeling, who pays the mortgage? Like, this house is not because of you. This house is because something me and your mom were able to put together, and there's absolutely no appreciation, no recognition. So that feeling that everybody watching has of recognize me, think about God who made it all.
Yeah.
All he wants is that's his. He did it, and he's not even in a selfish way. We sometimes want it in a selfish way. He just wants to be recognized and acknowledged, and that actually opens the faucet to more. Because now it's not gonna make our heads big and our bellies fat. It's all gonna go back to him as glory, and he's like, oh, this person knows where it's coming from. Here, have some more.
Yeah. Well, he does say that in the scripture. It says, just remember, when you walk into lands you didn't plow for, houses you didn't build. When you walk into that prosperity, he says, just never forget where it came from.
That's good.
That the Lord's given it to us. And so that's why we don't want to touch the glory. It's all the Lord's anyway, which then brings us to the final third G. And again, capital G, because some will make them their God. And that is the girls or the gals.
Yeah.
Or for the ladies, it is the guys.
That's right.
You just don't touch that. And no, it doesn't mean we can't go up and hug them. Doesn't mean we can't shake their hands. But it just means that, hey, if I'm married.
That's right.
And I'm committed to my wife, and I have to constantly, as you could see, this is very uncomfortable to talk about. Maybe of all the 3 G's, this is the tough one, because I don't want to become offensive to any girl, woman, or anything. But hey, I can't play there.
That's right.
We cannot play in that area where we allow ourselves to either physically or emotionally get attached to a woman that is not our wife.
That's right. And it happens very easily. The thing is, if you see the downfall of man in every society on earth in the Bible, many, many times it was connected to an outside relationship of their committed or covenant relationship of marriage. And it doesn't let the single guys off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that lady may belong to a gentleman in marriage, or you belong to your wife in marriage, but the single girl belongs to God.
Mm.
That's her husband until she's married.
Yeah.
So even if you're going around and jumping around from girl to girl as a single man or married man, you're robbing from somebody. You're robbing from her and you're robbing from somebody. So the reason it takes you out in time, because sin tastes good for a season, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I know that word is
That's okay.
sin and we use that word, but missing the mark, missing the goal of what you want to do in life, that usually tastes good for a season. People have one drink first before they're having 10 beers a day. Mm. People try one little bit of drug, maybe prescription, before they're addicted to a drug or they're going outside of even prescription and having all kinds of crazy things. So it's always this little creeping in, and that's exactly how it'll happen with another woman or another man. Mm-hmm. There's this subtle, the attraction is normal, the desire to look is normal. And then what you got to do with your head is just turn it back to your wife or your husband, ladies, so that you don't step outside of a covenant. Mm-hmm. If our marriage, if our togetherness is to display our connection with God, which is what it is, that means he says for our relationship, don't have another God. Yeah. That's an idol. Mm-hmm. So literally, that other person becomes an idol in your marriage, and you're not focused on what you need to be focused on. And that's why it's a downfall. Mm-hmm. It's morally depraved and you're going to fall.
Yeah. Any area where you're feeling convicted and you know deep in your heart this is wrong to do. So when it comes to a woman, it comes to a guy, and you're feeling that being drawn to them, but yet at the other side, it's the whole devil on one side of your shoulder and the angel on the other. If you're that devil's speaking to you, but that angel's also saying, wait. You know instinctively that that's not where you should go. Then you already know. It's innate.
You know.
You don't play that game.
Yes. Run.
That's it, right?
Turn the other way.
And we know it's messed up. Pretty much any man dabbling in it, it's just ruined them at the highest levels. And the enemy, this is where I wish people would understand, this is so elementary, it's so schoolyard, because the enemy does the same thing to every man. He tempts all men and women the same way.
Even Jesus.
Yeah.
In the Bible.
So, it's like, wait, this is not a big deal. My attraction to that individual, that's not a big deal. I mean, you're making this fantasy up anyway in your head of what it would be like and how that's going to make you feel. And it's usually for just a little moment in time. Mm-hmm. And then when that moment is over, what you have to do to stay in that area of sin in your heart, to quiet the voice of good, so that you could accept that wrong that you're doing. Yes. What you have to do internally to make that happen is so much bigger and harder than it is for you just to say, no, that's not for me. I know it's not going to work. It's never going to give me what I'm wanting or what I'm tempted to think it'll give me. It's not going to take care of me like I want, because hey, no girl or guy was ever meant to be your God. Nope. So you sell your soul for that experience when it's really coming down to sex. Mm-hmm. You sell your soul for sex, and you forget that sex gets old. Just like having all that money, after a while, you spend it, gets old. And just like you think, oh my gosh, I'm getting the pats on the back, that gets old after a while. All that stuff gets old because you mentioned it, all those G's become little gods. Yes. That's why they are the 3 G's. Right. They can become little gods, and no gold, no glory that you get on your own, and no girl or guy is capable of being a guy.
Impossible. Capable of being a God, and that's impossible. And,
God.
And here's what I love to say to our Goodfellas and to anybody watching, if you are listening and you're thinking, yeah, but I got this. I've been really good at that. 20 years, I've been faithful. No big deal. I got this. You need to just think again and always assume that it can happen to you, because I think that that's when men let their guards down. A lot of times it's the longevity of the wins. You were just talking about it, when some victories are under your belt and some wins are under your belt. In the Bible, we see people coming off amazing battle wins, things that happened that were excellent for the children of Israel, for God. God got all the glory. Everything was great. Boom, right then when that win was coming down from that high, there was an attack. And a lot of times it was with women or with manipulation or with whatever else, the gold, the glory, and the girls. So if you, at any point in time, you're riding high on the horse and you're thinking, yeah, but not that one. I got to watch out for the gold and the glory, but I'm good. The girls, I got my wife. I'm happy and all that. Listen, stay alert. It doesn't mean it's going to happen to you, but we just talked about it a little while ago. It's like this little weed that comes into your life. Yeah. It could be an innocent conversation that starts at work. Didn't even have any flirting involved. Right. Then tomorrow or the next week, it's a little conversation that's got a cute little comment in there. And then another week or another month, I mean, we've seen it happen that it's taken months or years, and all of a sudden someone is involved, even just emotionally, not even sexually yet. Yeah. They're involved with somebody else and they're counting on a portion of their life in someone else of the opposite sex, instead of finding a way to make that connection at their house. So none of us are above any of the 3 Gs wreaking havoc in our life. We just work to stay above it, but we're not immune to the attack.
Yeah. And as pretty as it may look, because somebody may be thinking, well, you don't know what I live with, and look at that cute little thing or that handsome little thing.
Right.
As cute as they may look, as handsome as they may be, the feelings that you have if you ever have to look your loved ones in the eye, all that beauty just, it's spoiled. It's like ripe fruit that can be spoiled. Rotten. When you have to now look at your kids in the eye, or your wife in the eye, or your husband, and the realization of what you have done. You broke your marital vows.
Wow.
And you're going to look at your wife in the eye. And as a man, come on, how do you bring that pain to the woman that you say you love, that gave you kids?
Yeah.
Can't touch it, man.
Can't.
So, yeah, there's temptation. We're all tempted. It is. Thank you, Lord, for beautiful people. Amen. Men and women. Amen. I'm very grateful for that. I'm thankful.
We try to stay
because we really do, and we have wives that do as well. And I would say to those listening to us, do your best to be your best for your spouse. It does pay off, especially, going on 35 years of marriage, 25 years of ministry at Metro, 35 years of marriage. Life for me and mi esposa is better today in those areas of our life than all I can say. It just keeps it. Yep. Thankfully, the fruit is ripe.
Is ripe.
And and thankfully the Lord has helped me over the years be smart enough and more disciplined enough to not make that mess of touching that G, so that now on these years I can step back and still look at my wife and realize, man, you're the wife of my youth, and I haven't messed around. And does it mean that there wasn't thoughts? Oh my gosh, being alone in places and you're like, wow, nobody will ever know, and maybe she won't. But here's the thing that's always been in my heart: my wife may not know, but God would.
Yes, He does.
And I want Him patting me on the back. I want to stand before Him and hear Him say, Steve, well done. Yeah. You did it great. I don't want to be one of those guys, and I don't want you to be those guys. I don't want anybody listening to me to be one of those guys that did it so good, and then later on in life, boom, blew it because they got tempted by the 3 Gs and they touched it.
Yeah, and Pastor, just because we know numbers, and let's be fair, this happens halfway through the society, in the churches too. Yeah. So it could be someone's watching and like, man, I blew it, or I already got a big head. I I've already touched the gold. You know, I've already kind of thought about or gotten a little closer than I should have to the girls. Listen, it's just a matter of stopping and deciding that I'm not going to continue down that route. A lot of you have already maintained that road, you know, and that's great, and keep doing it. But we have a God, and I don't know how spiritual we want to get here, and I know it's Metro Life, so we have a God that's going to look at you and go, okay, listen, I'm acknowledging that you're seeing that in your life and you're turning around, and he's gonna help you in that area. So maybe it's just stop. Don't get any closer. It could be that someone's right there on the brink. It's only a cliff that you're gonna fall off of at that moment. So stop. Bring it back. Get back to your first love. There's a reason you married her. There's a reason you married him. There's a reason that you got that business deal and things went well for you. And there's another one around the corner, as long as we can stay away from these major pitfalls. And I pray all the time, Pastor, I'm not going to be one of those guys either. 28 years of marriage just now coming up, and I'm not going to do it.
Come on, man. We don't want to be like one of those dead heads hanging on the wall.
Just about.
Just about. That's it. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed this episode of The Family Business with Steve Alessi, Armando Gomez, John Roman behind the camera, as we have talked about the 3 G's up here at Goodfellas Camp. God bless.
Hey there, if you enjoyed this episode of the Family Business Podcast with the Alessis, then you'll want to know we've got more insight, more encouragement, more great conversations that we can have on Sundays, and even some surprises coming your way. So you want to make sure you subscribe to our channel and watch one of these next videos here next, because remember, family is everybody's business.